I'm Rachel. I'm a recruiting manager at SingleSprout.
And I'm Natan. I'm one of the co-founders here at SingleSprout.
Yes, and I've had the pleasure of working actually with some Codesmith alumni, helping them get jobs at startups here in New York, also in LA. And so we're big fans of Codesmith and excited to talk to you guys today about the job search.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we're very thankful to be here. Obviously a tough time, so it means a lot that everyone's logging on, hearing what we have to say. And the goal here is to help everyone in the job search, help people that you might know as well. It might be one thing, it might be 10 things, I think, in this conversation that we're going to have. And we want this to be a conversation. But it's from years of experience, our technology, our data, and also happy Passover to those celebrating. So I'll start off. So we're SingleSprout. We are a data-driven recruiting firm that builds engineering and product teams in New York, San Francisco, LA, Boston, Toronto, other cities as well. And now, obviously with the virus going around, remote is very, very popular, as I'm sure most of you know that, if not all. We partner with a lot of great organizations as well. So ScriptEd is one. They help inner city kids learn how to code. Charity Water, which digs wells in developing countries. And most recently in our current nonprofit that we partner with is one called Give Directly. Something to check out if you have the opportunity to donate. Give Directly has set up funds for people affected in the US as well as outside of the US from COVID-19. And every person that we place that is referred, we give $1,000 to the person that refers, and we donate $500 to one of these nonprofits. And then, last but not least, we have placed over 700 candidates and some very notable names: Oscar Health, Peloton, Better Mortgage, Segovia, which is the sister company of Give Directly, Common, 30 Madison, The Wing, a lot of really great names we've been lucky to work with. Anything to add there, Rachel?
Yeah, and I'll just add on the slide, we mentioned software engineers that we place at startups. We also help product managers, product designers as well. So that's something to note. And if you guys, one thing I meant to mention in the beginning, if you guys have any questions, feel free to use the function on here to raise your hand. If it's something that Natan and I are about to cover, we'll jump into it. If not, we might come back to you, but we'll make sure that we answer all your questions and leave room at the end as well.
So I'll start off with the North Star questions. And I already have one question. We'll be sharing the deck at the end. Yes, we will. We'll be sharing the presentation as well. So the North Star questions, I think that before starting your job search, or even if you're in the middle of it right now, it's really important to understand what are your wants and your needs. And you tend to always get your needs. You don't always get your wants. But having a good understanding, and we'll talk about it through this presentation, of what those are, it's going to help you accelerate the process. It's also going to help you minimize time that you might be wasting on the wrong opportunities if they don't align. And when we say wants and needs, these are kind of like your own values in your job search and your next opportunity. So we encourage you, maybe after this or in your own time, to write down these answers to the questions, review them during your search, potentially share them if you're working with a recruiter or someone you could potentially, or someone who could refer you to a job. Not necessarily sharing these questions, these answers with someone right away from your interview, but just so you have a good understanding and it kind of keeps you aligned.
Awesome. Yeah, let's jump into what those questions look like.
So one thing to note with SingleSprout, we actually do a lot of data matching, and we take these answers to match our candidates with the right opportunities. But that doesn't mean, again, that you can't do that for yourself if you're not working with us or not working with another data-driven firm. So I'll just jump right into them. Base compensation expectations, expected base compensation. Locations that you're open to. Are you open to working remotely? What's your ideal role? What's the most important aspects of your decision? And I encourage you to get curious with the answers that you write down. Maybe the first few answers to your ideal role is working with smart people where I can learn, but take that a step a little bit deeper of what does that mean? What does learning mean? What are your goals in learning? Number 6, how do you prefer to be managed? Some people want to work with a very close, tight-knit team where there's a lot of communication. Some people want to be very autonomous and work on their own and very limited communication. I think that's very important. Why did you join your current or last role? What's your favorite part of your current or last role? I think these 2 questions are good to understand what you like and what do you not like. And we tend to see candidates that answer these find the same sort of thing in their next opportunity that they've had in previous experiences. What does work flexibility mean to you? What do you need? So one thing that I saw from Lightspeed Ventures was that the number one most important thing in a job opportunity to candidates was work flexibility. And to some people that means having the ability to leave a little bit early or come in a little bit later for whatever reason. Some that's working from home. I think that stuff is very important, and it's stuff to get out in front of with companies that you interview with and potentially share with them. What does diversity in the workplace mean to you? What do you need? What are you looking for? That can mean 10 things to 10 different people, but I think it's very important to some people. What benefits do you want and need? I mean, that can be health benefits, that can be education benefits. These are, again, everyone is different, but I would have a list of these items to understand how to focus your time in the process. What's your timeline? When do you expect to finish the process? Do you have a lot of time? Are you trying to get the first thing that comes to you? And then last but not least, your absolute no's. Are there strict deal breakers such as industry, team size, location that you absolutely just won't do, or it's just not possible to do, and stuff to stick to there? Would you add anything there, Rachel?
Yeah, I would just add here, like, this is obviously a lengthy list, and it is important to think through each one of these things, but keep in mind that the answers to these questions might change through the process. So oftentimes what I see when working with candidates is they have an ideal role, or they have a definition of flexibility. And as they go through the interview process and talk to different companies, these answers might change for them and they might change for you. So just check in with yourself on these questions, refer to them throughout the process. And if things change and you need to iterate, you might target different companies. The whole point of this is to make it as efficient as possible for you and not waste your time. Make sure you're focusing on those right opportunities. So if the answers change, don't worry about it, but just make sure you're checking in with yourself on that.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts around that before we jump to the next slide?
Quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just curious to know if you are specifically hiring for startups that you work with, or are you more like candidate focused or employee focused, and you take in people and then based on what their preferences are, kind of help them through the whole process?
That's a great question. I mean, we're looking on both sides, to be honest. So I would say the answer is both. We're looking for what the candidate is interested in and what they're qualified for, as well as what the company is interested in and what they're qualified for. So at the end of the day, just to be very transparent, the business at this point pays a recruiting fee to us for candidates that we place. And so we're trying to find both sides to help them find the best possible match. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, Natan mentioned it before. It's a great question. Natan mentioned before how we're very data driven. So we're super fortunate, and we actually made like an investment in technology years back, and have 4 people on an engineering team that have built a software that helps us use the answers to these types of questions to match candidates with the right companies, so that we're not just sending candidates to all companies that we work with, we're sending them to the right ones. So to Natan's point, if you don't have that matching algorithm on your own, we're kind of providing you guys some resources to create your own version of a matching algorithm to figure out the right opportunities for you.
Well said. Well said. Any other questions or thoughts? Looks like James from the Bronx.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good.
Just going through this list here. I have a couple. One, as far as compensation goes, let's say we're out of line with where we want to be compensated and where we are experience-wise. Is that something that you guys help kind of guide us on, like what we need to reach that goal? Or or is that not really what you guys do? And the second question is, because you touched on education benefits, have you worked with any companies that maybe either fully reimbursed or hired and then helped someone go through Codesmith?
Rachel,
Yeah.
do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll definitely answer for the first part of your question on compensation. And thank you for raising that question and bringing that up, because it's actually something that you'll see towards the end of the document that Natan and I are going to talk about in more detail. But if you're working with a recruiter, like Natan mentioned, we are paid a fee by the company, so we're incentivized to get you the best possible offer. What Natan and I want to do here is provide you advice if you're not working with a recruiter, and kind of give you our best practices and 2 cents on how to go about the negotiation process. And we'll talk more in detail about this later. But what we recommend is really looking to like data points. So when we get to that slide, I'll go into more detail. And if there are follow-up questions you have, then please ask them then.
It might also, just to add to that, and we'll get into that, but in conversation that you start having, if you put down that, one of the biggest, benefits to you is that educational stipend, one, maybe you can research online. Do they do this? Oftentimes job descriptions will mention what the benefits are. It might be also something you have a great call and you want to list that and tell that to the interviewer and say, hey, look, I saw on the job description that there is a educational reimbursement. Can you share a little bit more with me about that? Or maybe it's something that they don't mention and ask, is that something that you guys do? So I think it's always okay to ask. And the point is to have a list where you can kind of focus your time and your energy in the interview process.
Awesome. Does that answer your questions?
So mostly, yeah. I think just to kind of rephrase a little bit. So yeah, all that was great information. Thank you, Natan. I guess what I wanted to ask though more was, is there a situation where you've seen people get hired and then get help with paying for this exact program for Codesmith, or is it more like we have to go through Codesmith to get to the interview process, in your experience?
So we work with startups and bigger companies that are looking for usually well-experienced engineers, though we have placed a few people from Codesmith. So most of the people that we're working with have, years of experience or at least come from math or science backgrounds. When we talk about educational benefits, sometimes that's helping to pay back loans. There's a loan incentive program. Sometimes that's sending people to seminars or having them do educational classes. I'm not sure, Ashley, have you worked with companies that give Codesmith as a benefit? Just curious.
So Annie, who is our hiring support, is also on, so I'll let her take this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. My name's Annie. I work on the hiring side of Codesmith. Thank you so much for holding this event tonight. I'm really excited to hear about your advice. But just to answer your question, James, we actually do have someone, or I think a couple people, I believe, in our part-time remote immersive program right now. They were already employed with a certain job, and they did pitch to have their company pay for Codesmith. And so they're taking that part-time program while also working part-time.
Got it. All right.
And
Thank
their
you so much,
company is
guys.
covering it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Cool. Thanks.
You mentioned that you mainly work with candidates who have several years of experience in this industry.
It depends. I mean, Rachel, maybe you want to jump in on that.
Because I'm curious, I think most of us here are like starting up or we finished a boot camp or thinking of going into a boot camp. And I'm wondering how prospective employers see this type of candidates that lack just a little or no experience, maybe 1 year tops or 2 years tops, without professional experience, but coding experience as a whole.
Yeah. For the candidates I worked with, they had previous tech experience. So maybe they were part of what Annie discussed, of maybe they got sponsored by their company to get additional education through Codesmith. But Natan and I will give some points that will really help candidates that maybe don't have as much professional experience ace the interviews. That's like a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight in terms of like how to show your value, which is this next slide, how to put your resume together, what types of examples to come to the interviews with, and some other points that I think will be really helpful there. And so maybe if it's okay with you, Alejandro, maybe we'll table your question more towards the end. And if there's anything we didn't cover or you want more specifics on, we can cover that in more detail.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
That was well said. So jumping into resume writing, we believe that your resume should be one page highlighting your expertise. And I'm seeing some questions on the right side, and we'll get to them maybe at the end, as Rachel said, Q&A. So jumping into kind of what we look for in a resume and what we believe our companies look for in a resume, at least, 3 of these 4, if not 4 out of the 4. So skills and tech language proficiency. I think that's huge. The ability to show that you're an expert in an area, in a skill or a tech language is always going to be something that I think a company gets excited about. And so the more that you can show in that niche that you've kind of carved yourself in, we'll talk about a few more areas, the better. The second point is showcasing industry-specific projects. So I think companies, especially right now, as we're going through a tough time, some companies aren't hiring, some companies are going through layoffs, and then there are companies that are hiring. The ones that are hiring are going to probably be looking for people with specific projects that relate to their industry. So that could be e-commerce, that could be finance, that could be advertising, delivery. The more that you can show off in those areas or one of those areas, I believe, and I think Rachel as well, the better. And showing and sharing those specific projects that you've worked on. 3, the soft skills. Tough to share. Obviously, you're not speaking in your resume, but writing down. Here are a few that you could sprinkle in, such as attention to detail, organization, the ability to prioritize, autonomy, collaboration, clear communication, and the ability to take and give feedback. And we'll talk more about that, but we've definitely seen, candidates that have gone into the process, have had great expertise in technologies and industry-specific projects, and then they miss the boat in, some of the soft skills, the behavioral qualities. So I think the more that you can talk to and share that you're good in these areas, the better. And then the last but not least are references. And we put down that it's optional on your resume to list people that you believe would be references. It is mandatory, in our opinion, to have people that are top of mind, that are people that either you can speak to very quickly and they can provide a reference, or not just at the end, maybe these are people that can help you get your next opportunity. And so we look at references as people that can vouch for the 3 above, the soft skills, the projects, the proficiencies. But something to keep top of mind, and obviously make sure these are people that are going to say great things about you. If you're unsure, I definitely wouldn't list them unless you know for sure. Would you add anything there, Rachel?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, these references are super important. To Natan's point, make sure that there are people who can speak highly of you and point to specific things that you've done and your experience. But it's also important that you prepare them. So you don't need to tell them what to say about you, but it's important that they know what's the role you're interviewing for. What's the company? What's that company doing? Why are you excited about that company? That will help the the reference check part of the interview, because the reference will be more prepared that way.
Cool. Any questions on the resume part? Okay.
Awesome. So the next piece is, so Natan talked about the North Star question. So kind of thinking through preparing your resume and preparing for your search. The next part we want to talk about is interview best practices. And Natan and I actually started thinking through this presentation before we were all working remotely, but we wanted to add a few things into this presentation that would be helpful in terms of interviewing in a remote environment, because that's currently what we're all experiencing. So the first thing sounds pretty simple, but test out your tech and set the scene. Super, super important. Making sure your Wi-Fi is working. Before I logged on tonight, I have a backup laptop right here just in case this laptop fails and I need to grab another one to chat with you. Not everyone has 2 laptops, but my sister's here. Luckily, I got to grab hers. But yeah, just making sure that you're testing out the Wi-Fi, checking that your computer is charged. Think about the space that you're sitting in. Is it well lit? Is it quiet? You know, can you really, you know, are you presenting your best self through this remote interview? Body language is super, super important on all interviews, but especially remote. It's still important to keep your shoulders back, sit up straight, and be confident. Exert humility, exert confidence. It's really important to speak with a smile. Sometimes you might have to like think about it through the process to catch yourself. Make sure you're smiling throughout the interview. The person on the other side of the screen will remember that. And then dress the part. So I know a lot of us are working from home. I've been pretty casual, but today I put on my blazer for you guys. So make sure you're thinking through that when you're going on these remote interviews. Awesome. Anything to add to that, Natan?
No, I think that was well said. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I was muted on the resume part and I had a question. Can I ask a quick question about the resume?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
If we have experience in different industries and we've switched into this tech journey, is it considered practical or smart to list those other experiences even if they're completely unrelated in different fields?
Yeah, Natan, I'll take this one. That's a great question. And I actually, we've done, I don't know if you guys have heard of Pursuit. It's actually another boot camp in this space. We worked with them, did a volunteer event at our offices, and that was something that came up with a few of the people that were there because maybe they were in marketing, maybe they were in sales, maybe they were in accounting, they had different backgrounds, but they were involved in an industry that they were applying for a job in for more of a tech role, and they were asking about relevancy there. I think that it's absolutely great and worthwhile to list why your background is relevant. Of course, the daily tasks are not going to be the same, but certain industries have certain lingo, and if you know the lingo, then you should highlight that, and that will set you apart from another candidate. So I definitely think you should showcase that on the resume, especially if you're talking about a specific industry and you're applying to a job in that industry. I think it's worthwhile, even if the job is not the same. What do you think, Natan?
100%. 100%. The more that you can, obviously they're going to be looking for what you have done for that specific role. If you're an engineer and you're applying for engineering positions, they want to know what proficiencies you have and what have you built. But after that, as Rachel put it, I thought that was fantastic. It's very important to show that you understand a specific industry as well. And so if you can highlight that point in your resume, I think that's great. And if you have a chance for an application and you put that in there too, all the better.
I come from a finance background and completely unrelated to software engineering, of course, and just wondering if I should be listing that previous years of experience in that industry that's completely separated when I'm applying to technology jobs in, I don't know, in some kind of other industry that is not banking or finance, like health, for example, or this type of industries. Just curious on that. Of course, I list all my projects and all my proficiencies in tech, but not sure how I should word or list my experience in finance if it's necessary.
Yeah, I would recommend not going into too much detail and just listing maybe the company name, what your role was, and the years you worked there. Because I still think it's relevant because maybe, and we'll get to this in a bit, but maybe the interviewer used to work at that company as well. Or maybe they know someone who's worked there, and that could just create like more talking points and commonalities. So I think it's worth putting, and especially if you're applying to fintech, but if you're applying to a different industry, I think it's still worth putting. I just wouldn't spend, we ideally want to see like one-page resumes. If you can keep it as concise as possible. I know that can be challenging, but it's really helpful. So you don't want to use too much of your one-page resume space on a job that's not really that relevant in terms of the details, but listing it and listing the dates, I think is totally fine.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think also just something to note, if you've had the if you have accomplishments where you were promoted, for instance, I think that's great. Like Rachel said, you don't need to go into too much detail, but it shows that you excelled there. Sorry, was someone going to say something?
See that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I heard, sorry.
Here. So I have two questions. My first question is about the slide you're showing actually. So which one you think is really the most important thing? Is it like the soft skill? Because from my point of view, I feel like the soft skills matter more than having the tech skills. For instance, if you apply for a tech job, this first question. And my second question is, I mean, when I read like different job boards or for different jobs in tech, software engineering, I really like that they just list all the skills possible to have, and then they put it out there, and then they will hire the person they actually want, because I don't know, sometimes in some that you see, it's like they require people to know all the languages, which is not really popular into software engineering. You cannot be an expert in Java, C, C++, Python, data engineering, data science. Sometimes you can see that advertisements are like that. So yeah, my question is, that's why I'm asking if it really matters to have the skills, because sometimes they don't really bother about which skills they actually need someone to have to get into their company.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting question, and we only speak for ourselves here and what we know. I would say for the companies that we work with, the number one thing that they're looking for are proficiencies. So they're looking for, what have you done in the past that is related to the current role? Usually that is a tech language or a tech skill. Sometimes then, we go to industry, and some people are very open and say, well, this person has worked in a startup, they have Ruby experience, it's worth giving them a shot. Again, an interview doesn't mean a job offer, just means a first conversation. And then after that, the soft skills, it's good to mention them, but those are really proven out throughout the interview process, right? And so I think it's good, and I wanted to make a note that it's good to kind of sprinkle those in. But if I look at a resume and someone says, well, I'm really great at prioritizing, my next step is, okay, that's great, but I want to ask them questions like, what does that mean? How do you prioritize? It's not something you can always give in a resume. I'm glad that they put that in there. So I hope that answered your question, and it's okay to disagree with us as well. That's just what we've seen. Did that answer your first question? I didn't necessarily get a good understanding of the second one.
Yeah, it answered my question.
Okay. Anything to add there? I know we have a few hands raised. James in the Bronx, James in Orange County.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm about to change my name to James East Coast after this. So during the interview, because like now that we're all home, if there's a remote interview, like the spot I'm sitting in right now, obviously wouldn't fall under what Rachel was talking about, having some place that's well lit, maybe clean looking in the back. So what I was going to ask was, because there's limited places in my house where I can have that, would a solid color, like professional looking digital background be good, or would that come off too cheesy?
I think that's fun. I mean, it's really up to you.
It could be white. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I think it's a way to show your personality in this job search. Obviously, you want to keep it professional. But I mean, for example, I fortunately have a white background, but Natan wasn't able to find that in his place, and he's there, and he looks very professional and sounds very professional, and it's not a problem that his background is not plain white. So yeah, I think it's just up to what you're most comfortable. I think more important than the background is that it's neat and it's quiet.
Gotcha. Okay.
Totally. How about Lou Wang?
Hi. I think I heard Rachel saying that you guys recommend a one-page resume.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so because my current resume has like 2 pages, and is that in general what tech companies want, or that's just your experience?
Yeah, I mean, that's just our experience. But two pages is definitely fine. I think just being concise and not keeping it to maybe more than 2 pages. I think if you need the 2 full pages, that makes sense. But if you're like only coming over 1 page a bit, try to condense it to 1. But I more meant like there are some people that sometimes send like a 6, 7, 8 page resume. And that's kind of more what I meant in terms of like keeping it concise. So,
Okay.
and
All
I'm
right.
happy to review it if you want to send it to me or want to chat about it offline. But yeah, 1 to 2 pages is totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
What about Hero James or Hiro?
Hi, Nathan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was looking through your website, and I see that you place a lot of software engineers with nonprofit organizations. I was just curious as to whether there's any significant difference for a software engineer working for a nonprofit rather than a for-profit private company. Do they offer the same benefits? Are the salaries competitive? Is it enjoyable to work for a nonprofit rather than a private company?
Yeah, great question. And I think that we'll move on after this because I think we're getting bogged down a little bit. I think that the nonprofit companies are looking for people that are mission driven and have shown that they're mission driven. So what are they doing to volunteer? Have they been in a part of organizations that are part of nonprofits beforehand? So yeah, I think that's one aspect. For now, just to keep things moving, would like to move on, and maybe we can keep it to 1 question at a time and then answer the rest at the end. Is that okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Natan. So yeah, I mean, we talked about some things you can do to prepare your space, but also you want to prepare technically, obviously, for these interviews as well. I'm sure you guys have seen these practice resources or have heard of them. So if they're redundant, ignore them. But if they're helpful, please check them out after. We hyperlinked each one. Whenever I'm working with a candidate, I always shoot these over in the beginning of our working relationship so that they can get some prep in. Awesome. The next point we want to talk about during the interview process doesn't have to do with the technical parts, but it's about being concise and coming prepared with specific examples. Before you answer a question, and I know this is towards the bottom right of this page, but always take a deep breath. Think about the question, think about how you want to respond, and maybe you want to ask a clarifying question. Maybe you don't understand the question fully and you could guess, but if you're wrong, you could be, answering in a way that you weren't intending to. So you're more than welcome to ask a clarifying question, and it actually shows great humility. So that's something that we would definitely suggest. Also, do your best to get straight to the point. Often, like when I'm talking to my candidates, I love how passionate they are about their technical projects, but sometimes they might be telling me about their projects for a very long time. And so I might give them the advice, hey, I would try to think about how you can describe this project in just a few sentences and really get straight to the point. If you find yourself talking for too long, cut yourself off and stop there and close that part of the story so that you can move on and make sure you're being as concise as possible. And the best way to do that is to practice. Practice speaking in the mirror. If you are lucky to have a friend or someone who would be willing to practice with you, whether that's over video chat or in person, or if you can use Speako, it's another app that we've seen people have success with. It's a way to practice speaking and record yourself and kind of look back on it and give yourself some feedback.
Cool. Well said.
Anything to add, Natan?
No, I think that was great. I think the clarifying question is always important. I think oftentimes we want to just jump in and we know the answer. We think we know the answer. And if you don't know the answer or you're just unsure, ask questions. Oftentimes that shows that we're listening and shows that we at least are interested, you know. Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of people that have been very, very smart, and they just talk on and on and on. And the interviewer is like, if this person can't listen in the interview, what makes me feel like they're gonna listen when they're working here? So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Natan. Great. And then earlier when Natan was referencing those behavioral qualities, so it's on slide 5. Those are things that you should bring up during the interview. So for example, one thing that especially startups are looking for is that people that they're hiring are autonomous and don't require too much hand holding, and are innovators and they take initiative. So you might want to share a specific time in which you took initiative. And so some examples I've heard from like my candidates were they were tasked with a project and maybe they didn't know the language or there was a framework that they needed to brush up on. And they went online and they used their Codesmith friends and resources to brush up on a certain skill. And then they were able to complete the feature doing their own homework there. So that's something that's one way that you could show autonomy. But I think one thing that is super important, and as recruiters, we hear this feedback all the time, you want to keep in mind that there's a fine line between being autonomous and then being collaborative, right? So it's really, really important to show, like, I could take charge, I could take initiative, but I'm also a team player and I also can work well with others. So just make sure that when you're coming into these interviews with different examples and stories prepared, that you're thinking through how, it shows autonomy, how does it show collaboration, and how does it show these traits together? Anything that you would add to that, Natan, that I may have missed?
That was great. By the way, we'll share everything later. I know there's a lot of text here, a lot of talk, so don't worry about that. And we'll get to everyone's questions at the end, I promise.
Awesome. Great. The next part is bring unique questions to the interview and do your homework. So one really, really simple and really easy thing that we would recommend you all do is take a second, a minute, 2 minutes before the interview and look up the person's LinkedIn that you're about to speak with. I think this is a small thing that we often don't do, and it can go a long way in building rapport with the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the video. So take the 2 minutes, look up their LinkedIn, see who you're going to speak with, and maybe find a commonality and bring that up on the call. Maybe you have a mutual connection that you can bring up. Hey, how do you know this person? I'm also connected with them. Hey, I went to school with this person. I grew up with this person. Maybe they went to a school that you went to or a friend went to. They listed a club that you were also part of at your in your high school. Or there's a location that they're from that you have relatives in. Just bringing these up on the call will make this interviewer remember you and will make you more memorable than the person they spoke to a half hour before, or the person that they're speaking with a half hour later. So it's a small thing that can go a long way. So we really recommend you guys do that before every interview.
Totally.
Natan, anything to add before I jump into this one?
No, I think the more that, and we'll keep going through this, but the more that you can show that you're human, which we all are, but having that, breaking the barrier of question answer to, hey, we might, know someone in common, or we might have something in common, out of the 5-10 other interviews that person is doing that day, you might stand out because you're the only person that does that. And you'd be surprised how often that just doesn't happen. So if you could take one thing, I think that's a great point, is do some research on the person that is interviewing you before.
Yeah, that's really true. And that leads really well into this next slide, which is around asking unconventional questions. So it's absolutely okay to do so. This is an unconventional time that we're all facing. This is unprecedented and we're all facing it together, literally around the world. So asking questions around what's happening right now is totally relevant and totally welcome. So one question you might ask is, how's the team adjusting to working from home? Where are you working from? Where are your colleagues working from? How's that been going? That will give you a little bit of insight into the culture and what it's like to work there. How do teams typically interact with one another? Do you Slack? Do you GChat? Like, what are your most common forms of communication and what does that look like? Since you will likely be interviewing, if you're interviewing the next few months, few weeks on, currently you likely will be interviewing online virtually. So you might not get to see the office. What does the office look like? That's a completely valid question. And I'm sure the interviewer will be really excited to tell you kind of about it and what the visuals are. Is it an open floor? Where do the co-founders, where does leadership sit? Will I be sitting next to my team? Does the product team sit next to us? Ask these questions to paint a picture for yourself so that you can really imagine what it's like to work there, and also so that the interviewer feels that you're interested and you're engaged. Anything else to add on that, Natan?
No, I think it's important. The first point struck a chord with me, which is, everyone's for the most part at home right now. Everyone's going through the same thing. Starting off the conversation about, how it's going and how working from home is going, instead of going straight into, question answer. Again, another point to show that you're human and show that you care. And I think that was very well said. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks. We kind of are saying this throughout, but standing out from other virtual candidates, you can do so by being alert, being energetic, and being enthusiastic. These are all things to keep in mind as I'm going through these slides.
And it makes me laugh a little bit,
Yeah.
because you'd be surprised how many candidates are great people and they have great proficiencies and they've built great things, but they don't bring energy and enthusiasm to the interview. And I know that for some people, they're more introverted, so that might be more difficult. It doesn't matter to a lot of people. Personally, I'd rather hire someone that might not have as many proficiencies, but shows more enthusiasm and shows more energy, because I know that they're interested. And so we do see a lot of candidates that get rejected despite having all the great qualities, but they just don't, they're just not alert. They're not energetic. They're not enthusiastic. They don't show that they care. And Rachel will share more, but I think that's great.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the next slide shows you some examples of how to be energetic and how to show your enthusiasm. To Natan's point, it's so disappointing when I get feedback as a recruiter saying that a candidate failed an interview because they didn't seem they were excited. Or maybe the interviewer asked, what excites you about SingleSprout? Why do you want to join? And they say, actually, I don't really know much. My recruiter told me to talk to you. It's really something that happens a lot, and we want to make sure that we're giving you some tools around that. So be specific. That is the first thing. Don't just say you're excited. What excites you? What are you looking for in your next role? Why does this role at this company match that? What specifically can you talk to? Do your homework and do your research. So research the company, review the job description, maybe look up some articles, maybe look up some information about the funding. What I personally love to do is I love looking up, if it's a startup, because Natan and I work mostly with startups, I love looking up articles that maybe share details of why a VC gave funding to a startup. That might give you some interesting insight into like what their future plans are and growth, and you can talk to that during the interview. So what we would really recommend is before taking an intro call or an interview in general, think about 3 reasons why you are excited and it's a good fit for you, and have 3 questions to qualify or disqualify those North Star questions from before. These questions, this is like the key part of the slide. These questions should and need to come from a place of curiosity and humility. But if you frame them in the right way, it could go a long way in getting the interviewer on the other side realizing why you're a fit, and also help you figure out whether you're a fit or maybe not, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I think just something to add there, the reasons of why we're interested in getting a new opportunity can be very easy for us to come up with. It might be because we need money or we need more money. It could be because we're bored or we hate our boss. These are not great reasons. The reasons that people want to hear in an interview is 3 reasons really, like, why do you want to join this company? So the more that you can prepare yourself for reasons of why you want to join this company based on your North Star questions, and have questions that associate with those topics, the more focused you're going to be, the more interested you're going to be, and the more interested you're going to sound. And I think that really, if this is one slide, is I'm glad that we put this in there. think it's super important.
And then the last thing is pretty easy, pretty small. I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but sending thank you notes can go a long way, make you stand out after the interview. What I wanted to mention on this slide here is what I mentioned on the last, which is about being specific. So just make sure that when you're sending the thank you note, maybe you're referencing something that you've discussed with that person. So not only thank you for your time, but thank you for explaining to me how XYZ works, or it's really interesting to hear about how your team's working remotely, but still doing the virtual hangouts, huddles every morning to talk about the projects, whatever it may be as specific as possible. It'll show, again, your interest and your enthusiasm for getting the job. And it'll also make you more memorable and stand out amongst other candidates because they have that in their inbox and in something specific. The one other thing I'd add here in thank you notes, if there was something that you talked about on the interview, during the interview, and you feel like, I could have answered that question better, or I don't love the way I responded here, and I thought about it more after, and I actually think this is the right answer. I always tell my candidates, if they have lingering thoughts like that, shoot the interviewer a note. Thanks for your time, the whole thank you message, and then say, I was thinking more about the question you asked me, and actually after noodling on it a bit, this is actually how I would approach it. If they were wondering about that part, or they are pausing on you because of that, it might go a long way to see you bring that up in the thank you note.
Just to take a step back, because I think we're throwing a lot at everyone, and again, we'll follow up with the deck here. I say this very lovingly and truthfully. Rachel is amazing at what she does. She's probably one of the top tech recruiters in New York City, maybe even in the country. She has a lot of experience in each part of these processes, from resumes to interviews to salary negotiations, and she'd be willing to help anyone after this with any questions, as well as myself. And so we're super thankful, and I love what Rachel's saying so far. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Natan. I appreciate it. And yeah, I learned everything from Natan. So he's an awesome recruiter himself. And yeah, like Natan said, I know there are a few questions coming in. I want to make sure we get through the material just for purposes of time. And I think at the end, we can go through all the questions you have. And if we run out of time, feel free to reach out. We put our emails at the end. Awesome. So we've talked about preparing, for your search, preparing for the interviews, actually conducting the interviews, especially in a remote environment, questions to ask. This last part, and someone raised a question earlier, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting your name who raised it, but you raised a question around compensation. So we're talking now at the end about securing the best offer. That doesn't just mean the finances, it also means the best opportunity for you. So working with a recruiter can be super helpful in this part of the process, especially because often we are kind of your agent in this process. I like to think of myself as like a sports player's agent. I'm an engineer's agent. I'm looking out for them, I'm negotiating for them, and I'm helping them secure the best opportunity. But if you don't have the opportunity to work with a recruiter, or you're doing this on your own, I wanted to share some tips that Natan, myself, and the rest of our team at SingleSprout often use in terms of strategy at the end of the process. So one thing that I want to note on this slide is around other opportunities and your timeline. Think about sharing this information with the company if relevant. What it will help do is show your marketability, and that could increase your chances of securing an offer. And also, if you're approaching later stages with another company, maybe you have an offer in hand or about to have an offer in hand, but you're really excited about another company that you're waiting on feedback from, you might be able to leverage that other offer to get that company to expedite and move a bit quicker. So it's really just about communication here and sharing that information so that at the end, you not only have one offer, you have multiple offers, you're weighing the different opportunities, and the decision's really on you. You have all the information you need to make the best choice. Anything you would add to that, Natan?
No, I think that's great. And I think, having an understanding of where you are is probably the most important thing from this slide, of where you are in the process and, where your other opportunities are. We talked about timeline in the North Star questions. Those are the 12 questions to help you kind of find the best opportunity for you. kind of trying to hold to that timeline. You know, that might change, but ideally it doesn't. And throughout the process, you're saying, hey, my goal is to have a job offer by May. My goal is to have a job offer by May. Here is where I'm at. I have, 3 interviews in the middle stages. I have 2 at the end, and I have 1 offer coming. Just wanted to be transparent with you. And as Rachel said, that might help you in increasing the offer. That might help you in getting an offer. There's a lot it can do there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you should, make that call and based on how you feel comfortable, but I feel sometimes people refrain from sharing that information, but it could be really used to help them. So just think about that. Maybe run it by other people and see their thoughts as well. Great. Then the next slide is understanding the value of the position and your own value, which can be pretty challenging. So when the question was raised earlier around compensation, I thought of this slide. It's really important here to refer to data points. So that can be easier said than done, but utilize your network, utilize recruiters, check online, try to find out, what did recent offers look like? What are similar companies offering? What offers have you gotten so far and what do those look like? And then really have an honest conversation with yourself, right? So how does this opportunity align with those questions and the answers to those questions Natan referred to earlier? And then also, where can you potentially flex? This is super important to keep in mind. How do I value cash and equity? Natan and I work with a lot of startups, and often equity is a part of the package. So, non-public companies, they offer options, and that can be really enticing to some people. Other people don't value equity as much as they value cash. So just thinking through where you're flexible, base salary versus bonus, annual bonus versus sign-on bonus. Knowing your flexibility can help you get the offer and also put you in the best position in the end.
Yeah, I think, just keeping everything together here, it's a tough time for many. And the reason that we have these questions and we put down, have an honest conversation with yourself is oftentimes, people want to go for the opportunity, and hopefully you get multiple offers and people want to go for the opportunity where you make the most money. But at the end of the day, it's where are you going to be, in our opinion, really focused on your own core values. Some people that's learning, to some people that's growing in their career, to some people that's finding an educational company that, really gives a benefit around education. There's so much there. And I want to encourage people that, everyone's in their own boat, but I've seen a lot of people go after just, I want the best, I want the most money possible. And I've seen a lot of people that hasn't necessarily been that best opportunity. They call us a few months later, 6 months later, a year later, and they're like, I wish I would have gone to the opportunity where I knew I was going to learn more, or I was going to have a chance to mentor more. And so again, just going back, and I know I sound like a broken record, but having those core values aligned with the job that you're going to as best of that you can is going to be super helpful. Not just what is the cash amount here. It's really like, what impact are you making in your own life and then to others?
Yeah, it's a great point, Natan. And really weighing and prioritizing the answer to those North Star questions early will help keep yourself in check too at this point in the process. Great. And then this slide is around negotiation. So if you are working with a recruiter, I would definitely recommend talking to that recruiter about the strategy to negotiate. But if you are doing this on your own, we wanted to give you some tips and tricks here. We mentioned data before. Definitely utilize data to help back up why you're asking for what you're asking for. So feel free to share what your other offers look like and why this compensation makes sense to you and why you're asking for it. It's really crucial to limit the back and forth. And one way to do that is to show genuine interest and willingness to accept. And all of the reasons that you're interested, you want to tie back to those North Star questions and really share with the company those specifics of, this is what I was looking for in my search, XYZ, and this is what this company has to offer, and that's why I'm interested. And then the last thing is just a little piece of advice that we would want to share at this point is provide a package suggestion to the hiring manager, to the recruiter at the company you're working or you're looking to work at a hiring manager is much more likely to stretch and to like go to bat for you, because they have to go and use some internal capital and use some resources to ask for a flex on their budget if you're asking for that. So they're much more likely to do that for you if they know you are excited and that you want to join. So it's totally fine, as long as you mean it, to give your word and say, hey, this is the offer I'm looking for. And if you hit it, I have other interviews next week. I will, shut them down and I will accept this offer because I'm really, really excited about the opportunity. So that's just one piece of advice that we do that as recruiters on behalf of our candidates a lot, but I'm not sure candidates know the background there, or that could be a positive way to get what you're looking for. So just wanted to share that with you all. I hope it's helpful.
I thought that was great. Just wanted to know, this isn't Jerry Maguire. Some of you might know that movie of the sports agent. If you are negotiating, which we encourage, we do encourage just to limit it back and forth, have an idea of what you're looking for and share that and say, hey, if I get this, then I will accept, just as Rachel put it. The problem is if you keep going back and forth on the negotiation, oftentimes the company will rescind the offer, especially now, as there are more applicants now. So something to think about there.
Definitely. And you want the company to feel that you're genuinely interested, and these are the people that you're hopefully going to be working with. So you really want to keep all that in mind during the negotiation. I've had some clients say that they feel that the candidate is just maybe using their offer to get a better offer elsewhere. You never, want them to feel that way. So a way to avoid that is to limit the back and forth. So that's a good point to bring up, Natan.
Looks like that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for having us, listening to us. We'd love to help anyone and everyone, and stay safe and have a great week.
Yeah, thank you so much for all taking the time to be here with us. And if you have follow-up questions, let us know. And just wanted to thank Ashley and the Codesmith team for giving us the opportunity to chat with you all today.
Of course.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Ashley
much,
and
Natan and
Codesmith.
Rachel. It was so great having you both. I learned a lot as well. So thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us today.
Of course. All right. Thank you all. Stay safe, everyone. Take care. Bye.